I'm talking to Ben Fogle this morning on board a gorgeous yacht overlooking the Tower of London, so a lovely iconic spot to interview you, Ben.
Absolutely.
Tell me, do you take whiskey on your adventures?
You know, I have to say that there's one luxury I pack. I don't like to pack too much when I go away. I like to be quite efficient, but I've always, kind of for the last 20 years or so, had a little bottle of whiskey with me wherever I've gone, and I think there's something quite soothing about just being able to have a form of escapism wherever you are, whether you're stuck up a mountain or in a jungle, to be able to have this comforting moment.
So when would you take your bottle of whiskey out? After a hard day's trekking and adventuring?
On a 2-week trip, I might have it twice, maybe even once. So it would be a special occasion, maybe celebrating achieving a halfway point, or having had a really tough day, whether it's weather, physically. I like to use it as a sort of carrot to kind of keep me going.
So the one thing I'm fascinated to ask you is about being an adventurer in the tradition of Colonel Blashford Snell or Sir Ranulph Fiennes. Do you think adventurers are born or are they made?
I think it's probably halfway between the two. I think some are born, and I think people like Blashford Snell and Ranulph Fiennes are natural born adventurers. I don't think I was born as an adventurer. I think I've kind of made myself.
What turned you into an adventurer?
I think it's my own drive to kind of prove to myself and to others that I can achieve physically, because what you must remember is the sort of adventures that I do are quite different perhaps to what Blashford Snell or Fiennes do, which are pure. Their challenges are often born out of discovery. They're more explorers in some ways.
Yeah.
Whereas I like to push myself physically, whether it be in a foot race across the Sahara Desert, or a rowing race across the Atlantic Ocean, or a foot race across Antarctica. There's always a time pressure. And I think for me it's very much, I enjoy that physical pursuit as much as the geographical one.
Were you like that as a child? I talked about David Attenborough and said that as a boy he told me that he loved to go off for days on his rally bicycle and collect fossils. Did you do that sort of thing as a child growing up in Dorset?
When I think back to it, there was definitely elements of that. It kind of popped in and out. On one hand, I didn't really like camping or the outdoors, but then I found myself attracted to it like a moth. And I would, in a similar manner, I'd get on my bicycle and disappear from Blandford, where I went to school, to Poole Harbour, and I'd muck around in the sea, and I'd just go off on my own. So there was certainly elements of that. And actually, when I turned 18, when I left school, I went straight off on a big cycling adventure down to the south of France. I wanted to find a cheap, efficient way to get there, and I thought I would get on my bicycle. So I went with 2 friends, and we cycled there in about 9 days, and it was an amazing experience.
So what do you think the catalyst was when you were an adult for pushing yourself and doing these extreme forms of endurance? Was it the programme that you made for the BBC, the Castaway programme on Tarrant? Did that give you a taste?
I think my experience on Castaway, where I was marooned on an island, it gave me a taste of adventure. It gave me a taste of being cut off from the rest of the world, and I was forced to spend long periods of time in my own world. But
did you enjoy that?
I did. I loved it. I loved spending time on my own. It was an incredibly important kind of period of my life, and I learned a huge amount there. I learned a lot about living, sustainability, and myself. And I think physically, the physical challenges came a few years later when I kind of, I think all men in particular, but I think humans generally, reach a point in your life where you need to take more care of yourself, whether it be what you eat, the amount of exercise you do, and I think that started about 8 years ago and has obviously snowballed slightly with some of the challenges that I've done.
So because you spend a lot of time cheek by jowl with nature, has that given you an acute awareness of how fragile our planet is, and that we need to do more to take care of it? Did that make you a conservationist?
Yeah, I like to call myself a conservationist. I think probably like lots of people, I'm not perfect, and I can hear an aeroplane above us. I spend far too much time in aeroplanes, but I like to do my bit, and I like to. I'm certainly more aware, perhaps, than many people, because I have visited places that have been destroyed by humans, whether it's by the change in the environment and the climate around us. And I'd like to think, actually, if you look at all the expeditions, it's many ways of how we should live. It's all about conservation in the actual sense. So where we're used to turning on the water and it comes pouring out, and you turn on the gas and you cook away and you use your phone or any electrical devices without even thinking about, charging them and the electricity they need. Suddenly, when you're on an expedition, everything needs to be rationed. You become aware of every drop of water. You would never dream of wasting a drop of water. You would never dream of wasting any food. Everything becomes very precious, and you become acutely aware of actually how gluttonous we are back in modern society.
And how do you carry that when you're back home with your family and your wife and 2 children? Do you try and live a life where you're very aware of conserving resources and living sustainably in London?
Yeah, I mean, I have great aspirations, and I always have. I think when I came back from that island, I wanted our own cow so we could have our own milk, and I wanted a goat in the garden to mow the lawn.
In the centre of London?
In the centre of London, and I quickly realised that wasn't going to happen. And for many years I found it frustrating that here was me kind of wanting to be some great eco-warrior and live sustainably. It's very hard in a big city, and I'm the first one to say that. Now listen, there are things you can do to improve it, and I try to do that, but also I don't want to kind of be Captain No Fun at home by saying no to lots of things that make life a lot easier. And I think the ideals of the modern sustainable family or sustainable lifestyle is that balance. It's like everything. If we go back to diet, I don't cut anything out of my diet. I eat lots of things I probably shouldn't do. I drink lots of things I shouldn't do. But as long as it's in moderation, and I think sustainability should incorporate that. So I take far too much air travel, but I try to mitigate that through other means. Now, the other means is not just planting some extra trees. It might be charities that I work with. It might be donations that I make to specific projects. I think we can all find out a way of balancing things out.
Don't you think also that we need to make sustainability fun? I mean, that's the idea of my magazine, Ethical-Hedonist.
Yeah.
I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
I actually want to inspire people and not lecture to people. Make it easier for people to go green and have fun with it. By buying local products, by championing British artisan companies so that we don't ship things around the world, to actually fall in love with the idea of artisan crafts, which could be a whiskey or it could be a suit, that it's made in London instead of made in China.
It's a classic example. What I'm wearing now is a great British-made suit made on Savile Row. I firmly believe we need to not only support our kind of British industry because we need it, but also because it's
more
sustainability.
Sustainable. And these companies are
sustainable.
Naturally sustainable.
Exactly.
They always have been.
But the problem I have found is the press can sometimes be a little bit cynical, and as soon as you especially if you're on the public eye, as soon as you put your head above the parapet and say, I'm a bit green, you have to be greener than green. Listen, I kind of realise that, and I've had my errors along the way, and we all do it, but I also firmly believe in exactly what you say, that it should be fun. It shouldn't be a frightening thing, the whole environmental message. It should be very simple, and the simplicity of just turning off a few extra switches that we're not used to doing is a very simple
and going
measure.
To a farmer's market with your kids,
which is what we do.
And family.
And that's exactly what we do. We live at Notting Hill Gate, and it becomes a big outing on Saturday. It's where we get all our fruit and veg. The children love it. We get to waste a couple of hours with the kids there. Yeah. They march around trying little bits of imperfect apples that taste far better than most of the apples you'll buy at the most expensive supermarkets. Yeah. So you're right. It's fun and it's good for you, and in many cases it's even more tasty.
Tell me about the programme that you made for ITV, Harbour Lives. Was that a lot of fun to go back to the area where you grew up?
Yeah, I've really loved doing Harbour Lives. It's been nice to do something back in this country and in the British Isles. People seem to have really enjoyed the whole series, and I'm hoping to do some more. And it was nice to go back to my childhood kind of county, Dorset, where I spent so much of it. It's a beautiful part of the world, and yes, fingers crossed there'll be another one.
Okay, finally, I'd just like to ask you about Alan Whicker. you mentioned on Twitter that he had inspired you, and I was thinking, well, Alan was very urbane, so I was quite fascinated by your comment. What was it that you liked about Alan that has inspired you as a presenter?
I think Alan, I grew up watching Whicker's World, and it was my little window into some extraordinary places and people. And I've always enjoyed the eccentric, and I think Alan Whicker was eccentric by the nature of where he went and who he met. And he was very urbane, and I liked the fact that he was very stiff when he went away with his jacket and tie, and he was almost like a fish out of water, but he was a brilliant broadcaster. He said it as it was, and he took us on this amazing journey, and there's no doubt he was one of my great inspirations over the years. Watching him has certainly encouraged me, and I can only dream of going to some of the places that he was able to get to.
Okay, finally, do you have a green tip for my ethical hedonist readers? Something that would be fun and life-affirming?
Well, I tell you what I've just done at home. I've got kids, and we want to do our own vegetables, so we are building a children's Wendy house in the garden with a green roof on it to grow all of our veg and potatoes. So that is a fun, hedonistic, green way of making sure the children can enjoy the garden and you can have some fresh veg.
Sounds very pragmatic and fun. Thank you very much,
Thank
Ben.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.